Hey everyone, and thanks for coming. So we're very excited to be here with Boss and Sandy, and Laura will be there in a few minutes. But if you want to just give us a quick intro and a little bit about the background.
Yeah. From the sale, the president will to for doing for a while, and definitely feel very personalized on the and on top of the whole thing and from all of that from the popular stable people can
Hey everyone, I'm Sandy. Good to see so many familiar faces. We have folks who are taking the growth marketing class at UC Berkeley here, as well as our Stanford class on entrepreneurship as well. And right about me, also have been in the field of growth for many years, leading growth at companies like Pinterest, Meta, where I worked on Facebook and Instagram growth. Most recently at Descript, which was a Series C opening impact startup. And excited for today's conversation.
You should give them a little bit of extra credit for coming if I didn't see any students.
I'm taking note.
But so you're both very growth-minded people. So AI, everyone hears about AI all the time. But where do you think it has the most impact and can be most scalable? Are there any particular industries? Are there any particular types of problem where you think it can have a really scalable impact?
That's a great one. So the way I look at it is that we have maybe two main areas. Where the first one is where we try to disrupt the classic business. And the example here would be actually scale because the big part of our job is how do we find people to label that data. And so we basically need to squeeze them through the whole recruiting process, right? And we're talking about tens of some people. If we were to have a team dedicated HR teams, probably going to be a 1,000 people strong team, right? But instead, we rely on LLMs, obviously, to pre-screen the folks and kind of make a decision on the fly. Should we proceed forward with a given candidate, or it's not? Right. So this is the type of work again that is happening across the board. Obviously, that scale has a different scale. But anyways, and then the second area is what I believe people before us were talking about, right? Is what would be potentially possible with the user. And it's a big question mark as of right now. What are those use cases? I yesterday had a conversation with a friend of mine, one of the big companies where he's running the GTM function for their LLM. And basically the whole strategy that they use is they come up with an idea that, hey, let's use our LLM for support, or customer support maybe. And then they just reach out to their customers, they're trying to solve this thing. If it lands, awesome. Then they try to scale it across the board. But they don't really know what they're doing. And they're still trying to figure out use cases. So that's kind of the big question mark that we don't think that would good answer to.
Yeah, I'll add two different perspectives to that. So for me, seeing is believing, and then doing is also believing. At least for what I've seen, AI be able to scale on two fronts. The first one is as it relates to work productivity. So, one area that I've already been able to see AI play a huge part in is, of course, using the powers of generative AI for content generation. Just to give a quick example of that, 3 years ago when I built a programmatic SEO or search engine optimization team, the way that I went about that process was figuring out how I could hire and outsource writing to content writers, right? I would work with an agency and I would see which of these companies can output 30 to 50 blog pieces on a monthly basis, and what is the quality of that, and how in-depth can that writing be, and is that writing up to par in terms of quality, style, tone, match with our brand, etc. Fast forward to post 2022, the way that we think about programmatic SEO is completely flipped on its head. For instance, the way that I would conduct even keyword topics research, I've used tools like Fraser or Surfer SEO to even come up with the general broad keyword topics that I target. Then I pass it into a tool that generates programmatic SEO articles like a Byword AI. And then ultimately, the way that I implement that is using the content outlines and drafts that is produced by AI, give that to a human reviewer. Of course, the people who are great at writing have that creative edge and can integrate more of our custom tone and voice into that writing. And there we have a programmatic SEO strategy. So fundamentally, the way that we do things has changed. And two outcomes of that: one, we do it way faster, and secondly, we do it way cheaper. In terms of the actual results, we see that the impact on being able to acquire traffic and users and conversions is actually, for the most part, unaffected, right? And I think that's actually a great example of how one of these particular workflows can be scaled. The other example I want to talk about is just scaling yourself personally. So one of the ways actually I love to use AI on a daily basis is use AI to challenge my own thinking. Because oftentimes when I'm coming up with ideas, I find I'm very sort of biased by my own experiences, or it's hard to poke holes and find flaws in your own thinking sometimes. So I'll use a prompting technique, which sort of goes by the name of LLM as a judge. And you ask it to evaluate your ideas or your responses or your outputs, on a scale of 1 to 10, according to various dimensions that you care about. And it produces this very quick, objective way for you to evaluate whether or not you're being very biased in, how you're coming up with your own ideas. And other ways of using it include, for example, asking it to present to you an argument in favor of the opposite perspective, and then you being able to quickly read that and evaluate whether or not your response or your perspective is holistic. So I think sort of in terms of workflow scalability and even also personal productivity, I'm seeing both ends of it, and those are some of the areas that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, really good insight. And I definitely agree with content creation, where like a lot of sales and marketing based tasks. Once you've set up your AI assisted workflow, you have it like producing content in your phone or like mention your brand identity, then you can just crank that up and do like 100 times more content, like pretty effortlessly. So I think there's a lot of recent developments in AI, and there's a lot of tools popping up. So how do you keep caught up with what's going on in the field of AI? And do you have any tools, any favorite assistant?
Good question. We do have like a section, obviously, where we like talk about all the tools, and especially tools that's we're built on top of the data that we generate. So this is the way, but I don't think like I use personally a lot of like third-party tools outside of like chat and stuff like that. Just because we have a lot of things internal, and sometimes we don't even know the name of the company that's like use that tool. Like we still use that. Yeah, I guess like my favorite ones I usually tend to be on data. It's like how do you work with the data? It's like typically if you work with the company, you have a million data sources. None of that makes sense, so we have to like figure it out somehow. And super excited about all the
There's so many different AI tools, to your point, that crop up. They're made by individuals, they're made by companies, they're made by big tech, etc. To be very honest, I'm constantly feeling overwhelmed and behind, particularly because I subscribe to every possible known AI newsletter out there, and every morning I see that there are 20 tools that I haven't tried yet. It makes me feel like I don't know what I'm doing, or really don't have a grasp on what's good, what's bad, and what the future looks like. I think the things that sort of keep me level-headed about it, well, there's this one platform, it's called There's an AI for That, which you've probably clicked into at some point in your social feeds or in your email newsletters, but I believe that as of today, that platform has over 15,000, I could be wrong, but somewhere around the sort of 15,000, 20,000 range, tools alone, AI tools alone listed on that platform, right? So just think about it, like there's no way you or I, as individuals, could go and try every single one of those tools. But I think the sort of like promising thing about this is that whether you're using that as your search engine or whether you're just trying to figure out where AI can make a difference in any kind of workflow you have, work-wise, work, personal productivity-wise, if you just search for it, it probably already exists. There's something kind of cool and reassuring about that, in that the market has been so fast to react, founders and individuals have been so fast to build tools that can help you be more productive in so many different ways. So I think the thing that gives me a sense of certainty and stability in all of this is that if you can imagine it probably already exists, and if it doesn't already exist, boom, you have a great startup idea that you could probably start tackling and using AI itself to even help you generate code for it or build. So that's sort of my approach to this. Favorite tools wise, it's tricky. I definitely have a bias towards the tool I use within the realm of growth, but probably my favorite tool these days is Perplexity. I don't know if you sort of followed some of the recent product updates. They've been on this massive release fest in the last several weeks, where day after day they come out with some of these mind-blowing ways of using Perplexity for research. For example, I think last week they just released a tool that allows you to now query for live stock prices and even look into the corresponding public filings or 10K and search for how much did the company spend on like sales and marketing and last year in comparison to like 5 years ago, et cetera, et cetera. So that is really cool, right? Because the pre-AI way, the pre-Perplexity way, at least, of doing that is you go to some platform for tracking the stock price, and then if you want to look at the 10K, you go to the website, you can public filings, you go to PDF, you can go find, and then you find the number that you're looking for. So by the way, it's how financial analysts actually do their work on a day-to-day basis, but Perplexity just brings all in to you and serves it to you in this beautiful UX that you can easily click into, double click into, and then further query if you have more questions there. So yeah, something I'm super excited about these days is Perplexity as a tool.
Awesome. And welcome, Laura. Glad you can make note.
Testing. Hey, everybody. It's this came from another event. So glad to be here. And thank you so much for being so patient.
Great.
But hopefully I didn't miss too much good stuff.
Oh, you're fine.
Good try.
So, great to have you. If you want to just do like a very quick intro, just about you and your background.
Real quick, my name is Laura Teklemariam. I am a senior director of product management for LinkedIn. I head up profile, messaging, and groups. I own all of your profiles. And I've been in tech a long time, had a product for a long time. I'm a builder at heart, innovator, a disruptor. In terms of AI, I've worked prior to LinkedIn, I was at Netflix, and then prior to that, I was in video games. So I've been using AI a long time. Excited about our conversation.
Awesome. And I'll ask you what I just asked in the end. But there's a huge deluge of information about AI now. How do you keep on top of it? And do you have any favorite tools or favorite systems?
Yeah, so there's two different things. There's AI and then also Gen AI. And so just so that everybody is aware, like AI's been around a long time. I've been working on AI now for over 20 years, but Gen AI is a little bit different with the models, the cost structure, the tools I use. I still use ChatGPT the most. I'm learning Lambda a little bit more. Been building it off tech. I'd say other tools that are like personal. There's different workbooks now that you can use, like Google Workbook is a tool that if you haven't tried it, say go ahead and try that. And then in terms of staying on top of it, really through conversations, when people say like I just gave at least 2-3 tools, pick the name of those tools, Google them, figure out like sign up for accounts, test them out. A lot of these models are still early stage, especially in the Gen AI space. So that's how you become a little more accustomed to them. The other thing that helps with staying on the cutting edge of technology is the thing about AI, this next wave of AI that I really like is that the onboarding to them is not that difficult compared to before when we were creating the different types of models we were creating before. You can always ask ChatGPT how a certain tool works. They give me the first 3 things I should do on this tool and or give me an onboarding guide, and ChatGPT will literally give you an onboarding guide to the tool. It's equivalent for those of us who use the program, like your Hello World equivalent. If you're in programming, it's an equivalent.
Awesome, thank you. And I will back up also. I would recommend Whisperflow. That's my favorite of the. But so it does. You press a button on your Mac, and then you can talk to it, and it's nearly perfect, like speech to text. And so it's been really helpful because it works just across all my apps. So suddenly I'm just dictating my text, my WhatsApp messages, my emails, like ChatGPT queries. So it's made working on my laptop a lot easier, I would say. Okay, but so moving on from the topic of just AI tools, let's talk about how you've actually used AI in business. So are there any examples you can think of where you got some unique insights out of AI tooling, or where you would recommend integrating it into a like workflow?
Yeah, like speaking of the data, I just found this the name of the tool that we use is called count.co. Basically, it's kind of like a Figma, but for data analysis, which helps a lot because you can like see visually like the query and how it's built. You can like optimize on the go and also like build all the dashboard that you need. So that really speeds up things up by a lot. That's on the data side. On the creative side, it's well, I run ads, a lot of them, so pretty much anything that can help me with the images or videos creation. In that regard, I'm slightly biased. There's this tool called Less Enhance. It's like GenAI, image GenAI, since like 2018, I think. But basically, whenever I find a picture that I want to use in my campaign and the picture is not good enough, I will just like upscale it to Less Enhance and like make it usable. So that works really good. Yeah, I'm trying to think about something else, like specific tools.
Has there been a time where you've been like just brainstorming with AI and you got some really good insights out of it?
Yeah.
That work?
Yeah, you see, there's a problem because again, like I kind of know what data gets into, so I don't use it for brainstorming.
I do. I use it. I have like over 50 channels in my chat GPT. And so, matter of fact, I try to encourage companies to allow their employees to use ChatGPT. I know everybody's fearful around the data privacy and protection. I'd say scrub your data, obfuscate it. Like you don't have to give specific names, company, specific details, but the structure of your data can be the same. And that way you can use it as like a soundboard for ideas. Now AI still, Gen AI still hallucinates, meaning it will give you outputs that aren't realistic. So you still need to understand like and sift through the output. If you get the enterprise version, it'll actually give you the source. So it'll tell you where the output was sourced from, which is helpful. My favorite tool in terms of non-work is using Canva. So everybody familiar with Canva? Canva has a really cool magic wand tool because when you have Dolly and all these like images that output, like the text is never right? Like it's like spitting out some misspelled text and you want to change that text, plug it into Canva and they have a magic wand that will allow you to change the text on that image. You can publish it back out for your presentation, whatever it is that you have. And then I would say also with business, what you put in is what you get out. It's like, tech stack, like first in, last out, like what you put in garbage, you get out garbage. So when you get better at your prompting, actually spend time on your prompts. What I've been teaching product managers and new engineers that are becoming first-time prompt engineering is to spend time on their prompts, like write up 2 pages of prompts, actually create the different types of prompts you would use, and then go through the prompt testing of submitting those prompts into the AI, figure out the output, and then learn the type of prompts that help you alter or iterate. So prompts like delete that last input. Prompts like ignore everything related to finance. Prompts like completely remove the last 3 prompts. Like just things you would tell a compiler almost. You would want to start to learn kind of instruction-based prompts. So then that way you can organize the data that's going into the model.
Really good insight. And Sandy, you have anything?
Yeah, I love the point around become a good prompt engineer because you're exactly right. In my own lived experience, the output is as good as your prompt was and or your input. And that's true also about multimodal images, videos, etc. as well. Perhaps to add another sort of additional viewpoint on that, I think one thing I've also experienced in my own workflows with AI is, at least personally, the areas I find myself using it the most is at the very start of the process or the very end of the process. Everything else in between does feel like, I add sort of this layer of human discretion that helps guide it to the right output. So let me explain what I mean by that. So for example, in sort of a creative or film production processes, you have pre-production and then you have production itself and post-production. Pre-production is more of the sort of scripting or getting those raw footage is recorded and then organized. Production itself is, sort of putting in the fine precision editing, and then the post-production is like distribution and marketing. And what I've found personally is that with my utilization of AI tools, where I find AI has sort of the biggest point of leverage for me is oftentimes in that pre-production workflow, but really the ideation, the brainstorming, the rough cuts, if you will, and getting me into sort of this point where I can take that raw output and then apply sort of human creativity and or perspective and or guidance to it. Or it's at the tail end of the process where I have something that's mostly there and I just want to figure out what the final finishing touches are or the final edits on things, and then basically, sort of instruct AI to help me finish the process out. So this is particularly true for tools like AI presentation makers. If you've ever used tools like Gamma or Tone, for example, where you start with generally some kind of text prompt that gets you sort of the gist of the outline, but you actually look at the contents of the slides there, they're kind of like 20-30% of the way there, and then most of the sort of core content depends obviously on the topic, but a lot of the core content you're going to have to sort of fill in the edges of, and then of course on the tail end of things, being that final point of editing as well. So that's sort of my experience here. And so for me personally, where I like to apply the most AI in my own workflow is sort of pre-production and then post-production as well.
So it's almost like you're not getting from 0 to 100% done, you're getting from 0 to 8% done, and then
Right.
you figure it out yourself, or from 80 to 100.
Exactly, and kind of helping me get past the cold start, if you will, so that I can even get from, sort of the 1 to 100 stage
Never gone page.
The cold start problem. So at LinkedIn on profile, so we launched a product helping the teams to help people who are new to their profile or they maybe change jobs and they don't know what they want to update their profile with in their about section. Because the about section is your personal way to communicate like what you're interested in. And so we found a lot of people who had an empty section for about section, like, why do they have an empty about section? And we found it was due to the cold start, like they didn't know what to write. And so we released an AI writing assistant that will pull data from your profile and kind of give you a starting point on things, a paragraph you can add to your profile. I don't know if any of you give me premium to use this feature. So hopefully, but that's an example of AI that to your cold start problem. A phenomenon where a lot of people don't know where to start, and AI can help with that cold start. But I wouldn't say that's the final stage. Human intervention is needed at the.
Yeah, and so building on that, so what do you think are some of the barriers to adoption of AI? So right now we have a lot of students in the audience, and they're the best power users. So they might be wondering, okay, why wouldn't you use AI? But enterprises are slow or they struggle sometimes. So what do you think are some of the barriers to adopting AI and how do you circumvent those?
Start. So like you all are on the forefront of innovation and technology and disruption. In enterprise, there's a lot of risk that has to be taken into account. The main areas of risk that have to be taken into account are three fronts. The first is cost. So most corporations and organizations, what they're discovering when they try to implement AI into their tech stack or into their workflow is that the cost structure is a lot more expensive than they intended. Costs from the tokens that you have to the GPU, like all of the tech structure for scale, if you have a lot of data that you want to process, is really expensive. I'm not talking about the free base case on OpenAI. So that's the first. The second is around governance. Like what happens if you're B2B, as an example, is there a governance policy in place for corporations that says you can take your customers' data and put it inside AI, train the models on it, and then make products from your customers' data? Well, who owns that model? Is it the customer? Is it the company? So that becomes enough. You don't want to have create for founders. You create your business based on somebody else's data. 10 years later, now you're getting a lawsuit for 50% of your company because like that was on somebody else's data. So we don't know yet what that future world is going to look like when it comes to governance. And the third is bias in data. Inherently, we just don't have enough data yet to train some of the types of models we're thinking about, or the data is not accessible. Let's think about healthcare. Healthcare is prime, and fintech are primed for disruption of AI. But it's really hard to get financial data or to get bio data because of all of the governing policies around those data sets. And so it's hard to then start training on. Those are some of the three types of commercial constraints that we run into.
And I have a quick question for Ross, actually. So, because you work so much with data, do you have any guesses for, how these data privacy concerns will be addressed? Or say I train a model on user data, who's liable, or who owns the model, or are users entitled to like some compensation for their data being used?
They say I'm not a lawyer. Yeah. Okay. I'm not a lawyer, so it's not a legal advice. My hunch is that the industry moving towards like synthetic data a lot, right? Which then removes this question altogether because if you came up with this synthetic data, it's your data. And that's what we are seeing at scale. It's kind of that we're also using for like some projects to some capacity, but I think that will ultimately be the answer.
So the industry is moving more towards just synthetic data as a whole.
Yeah, it's kind of like hard for me to say like, oh, like in 2 months from now, everything's gonna be synthetic, or like in 2 years from now, nobody knows really. It's kind of like what the industry did just recently is that we said, okay, we're gonna have like a LLM, high temperature LLM to like come up with a bunch of like prompts or questions. Then we're gonna have like a low temperature LLM. We're gonna like come up with the answers to those questions. And the end result is just terrible. Because like the question does not make sense, and so then the answer doesn't really make sense. And they used to figure that okay, we still need humans somewhere. As we put them at the very beginning, so they can kind of like come up with some prompt structures. We put them in the middle, so they can validate the prompts. So we put them at the end, so they can validate some of the outputs. But still, people are involved to some degree. Likely, they will not be involved in the near future. But like, what type of future does that be? It's kind of like a good question.
Yeah, that's really interesting insight. So we're getting closer to the end, so I'm gonna move on a little bit. But what are some areas that you think are overlooked opportunities to deploy AI, or areas that AI issues that are going to affect AI, or like industries that AI will affect, but in a few years that people aren't really thinking about yet?
I mean, I mentioned the two about healthcare and finance. I mean, if you think about AI in the most commonly known area of finance, like Goldman Sachs has been running a huge AI model that predicts analysts need data too and predict which stocks are going to be growth, which ones aren't. I mean, imagine in a world where everybody has their own personal co-pilot that can help them optimize their portfolio, help them understand where they should be investing, which companies are like great fits for them, without having to pay like really expensive fees for portfolio managers, as an example. And that same customization, I think, can be applied to healthcare, where like right now, where you go through, you get you're diagnosed, you tell symptoms to a doctor, and then the doctor kind of does a A/B test, an informal A/B test to determine what's causing those ailments, or what are the reasons for your the things that are happening to you. Eventually, you can have preventative type of care that you give those same symptoms to an AI. That will then be able to help like start doing some of that.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting because then it's like AI will be more accurate than a person, but people have a flinch reflex because it's like if a computer does something wrong and different, you feel a lot worse about it than if something does. So that's something that I think people will have to psychologically adapt to as well.
Yeah, I don't know if the agents are going to have malpractice.
I mean, that's actually the problem, right? Because to your point, like the issue that we have as a enterprise in AI, the big issue is trust. And the trust comes from the problem is hallucination. And then with the agents, I don't remember the exact stats, but I think it's like they're wrong like 10 or like 15% of the times, right? But then it's like one agent, one job. But then if you're talking about the whole sequence of like say getting your like marketing campaign up, right? It's like a lot of steps in between. And so if you combine all the probabilities around the final output being wrong, most likely it's wrong. And so that's kind of like the big concern and the big issue. And to the point of like this bright future where it will not be the issue, I don't think it's gonna be with the technology that we have. Because the recent paper from Apple, I think it was from Apple, came out like a couple of days ago saying that the actual reasoning it's not reason. It just like the model pretends to reason something, right? Which then ultimately means that with the current setup, we will not be able to get 100% accurate result, even like 99% accurate result, which means then using the current like set of models for like health data can be really
Sort of tying thought around impact into the future and also sort of the concept of privacy as well. The interesting thing about a lot of these digital experiences we talk about powering AI with is it is sort of implicitly assumed that your default on in terms of sharing that data with provider and or your usage of AI. What's kind of really behind that is actually the offline context that we can potentially use to provide even more powerful experiences. Everything that we're seeing and hearing and saying improve. For example, we kind of automatically defaulted to be offline, so to speak, and not shared with some of these systems that we're using. And increasingly, we see tools and products that can help us use some of this data, like, for example, hardware that you can wear around your neck as a pendant, or devices that attach to your phone that can help you record these conversations, hit a button and hit record. And either have that stored locally and or transmit it through the cloud to some sort of software system that can transcribe and summarize and connect these various points of conversation across your digital meetings and your offline conversations. And that's an area where I feel like we're still pretty early in terms of having really fully formed workflows and also just really understanding a lot of the value there. What you're reminding me about in the healthcare context, I think a lot of these conversations are really important in sort of that patient-doctor context. There are certain tools that are also already helping transcribe a lot of that, but I think, how do you carry that then into, how well you're sort of tracking that for your own general personal wellness, like does the doctor own that, do you own that? That's kind of interesting questions. I think, companies will increasingly try to tackle some of these problem spaces. I think it has a lot to do with the privacy consideration as well, which is as a builder of these tools and solutions, what is your default assumption and what are you default building into these tools around data ownership and privacy? Imagine if, for example, you're loading a small language model into sort of local video recording devices or home security devices, and its main job is classification or helping you to organize this content so you can go back and look at it. If it's stored locally and some of these manufacturers or businesses are getting access to that data to continue to improve their models, and perhaps they're also doing a less good job of serving you as a customer as well. So these interesting trade-offs, and I think we'll probably see on all sides of the coin here, but it's kind of interesting and exciting to see more companies build in that space of really trying to capture more of that offline context.
Thanks a lot, Sandy. So do we have any final quick closing thoughts? And then we can open it up to questions from the audience.
Well, I'll start. So as you're thinking about founding your company, getting your first job, doing your first set of research, really spend time with critical thinking on what is going to give you the highest return on that prompt or that investment or that model, because AI is very costly. So just assume it's going to be more than you've ever spent on like front-end development or back-end development in the long run. So really think about like what are the top 2 workflows that you want to hyper optimize or you want to innovate. And then from there, that product management side, like go invest in something there, or just kind of like boil the ocean, spend that time upfront because it will save you a lot more money.
A quick thought on this is there's something known as the knowing doing gap, which is we all know we should be using AI for way more things, but we ultimately don't end up doing it. And one of the most commonly cited reasons is that when we try to use it, you don't get the ideal outcome. And the reality is that you won't get the ideal outcome because, again, it doesn't have maximum context and you don't become a good confident engineer overnight. And so one of the ways to bridge that knowing doing gap is don't reinvent the wheel. If you're not great at writing prompts, then go online and search for some pre-existing prompts. And then if you're also not familiar with this, there's an idea of a master of all prompts, which is you ask the AI chat itself to write the prompt for you act as a prompt engineer for the scenario and then ask it to walk you through questions so that it can help you design the best prompts, through the system itself. So overcome the knowing doing gap by doing, and the only way to do so is by learning from others and taking the templates that it gives out.
I have a few hot takes or cold takes. The first one is speaking about legal components and like all of these concerns. As a young startup, I probably would not be bothered that much, to be honest, because if you take a look at any fast-growing company, say Cooper as an example, right? They did tons of illegal stuff. Like their documents got leaked 2 years ago. You can look that up. It's hilarious and terrible. So they worked with Birds, like this bird company. The way we would launch on the market is we would organize, come there, drop a bunch of scooters, and just take the hell out of it before we can start. So that's it. And the second one is just be mindful that if you're building like an AI startup, you have basically two things to figure out. The first one is all the limitations that you have on the model side, agent side, whatever. And then there's still like a domain gap that exists, right? So I see like a lot of companies trying to go after like video acquisition as an example, because nobody loves doing that. It sucks. So like, okay, let's try to automate that as much as possible. And those startups are not doing really good because they don't understand some of the like first principles that goes into like running the successful campaign on like Facebook. Let's say. So when you're trying to do something like that, just be mindful of like those limitations when the model side and the domain you're trying to build something.
Thank you so much for those closing thoughts. Let's have a hand for the speaker. And then do we have any quick questions?
My name's Aram. I'd like to thank the panel. One question I have is obviously AI and LLMs for a matter, obviously emerging technology. They're viable and useful is still leaving lots to be determined. How would you say for a business you would balance the actual implementation of AI, both in terms of cost and in terms of energy and time, versus the actual productivity that might maybe be derived from? Because obviously sometimes even from just doing songs, as you mentioned, you can actually sometimes take more than if I had just originally invented on my own without even implementing the other one. Thank you.
Yeah, I can get started because we use LLMs like in a lot of places. The typical process there is we always start with kind of pilot, right? Which is in our case from a growth team, where we say like, okay, we have a bunch of people who failed their like math assignments. Let's see if we can retest them and see if they really have or if they're any good or something. Right, so that starts with a small pilot, and then if you can prove that the cost in your revenue is there, and you just kind of ratio of course, profit runoff, then you just go ahead and so it's more remind
Thanks. We have time for one more question.
Hi. So my name is Isha, and this is my co-founder. We are in very early stage. We have an idea. This one is not very closely related with AI, but we have a function. This function we can use AI and machine learning and big data to do. When we try to find out releases and go to response, so always say that we are related to AI as one of our very major points. I do get to the point that everyone's doing AI thing. Always focus on what we are doing as a platform. It's not the core function is not that related with AI, but we have like one functions related. So that's my question.
There's this meme I saw where it's like founders with AI. They're like it's the Pirates of the Caribbean where Jack's running and all the like monsters are running after him. And that was the meme of like if you say you're a founder on you left building AI tools, all the VCs are running after you. But you can start there. So what I would say is maybe you want to be really like AI is one it's no it's multiple. based on AI, and then they do the due diligence, they find out that you actually aren't going to read that. So it's okay to say that that's future thinking with AI, but you don't want to necessarily like pitch that positioning if that's not true, because people will quickly assess that and figure that out. And outside, but definitely like highlight. There was one hack you talked about real quick. One of my best hacks, I just want to tell you all, Otter AI, if you don't use it, I take Otter AI, I hit record if I'm in a meeting, whatever I'm doing, it records everything. I take copy the transcript. You talk about a nonprofit or a company that did this. Well, you can export the transcript, throw it in Chat GPT, and literally I can construct a report, I can construct notes, I can construct presentations like from this meeting or any meeting you have. So that'll be your new hack, Laura, and the team.
All right, thank you all so much for coming, and let's have a time without